start streaming.
Hi, Felix.
Hello.
Hi everyone.
Hello. Hi.
Hi Mahesh.
Hi, Jayachandra.
Hi Mahesh.
Hello, hello.
So yeah, a very good morning to all everyone. So I welcome you to the Blue Planet lecture series, and this is organized by INEAS plus Department of Geology, Department of Botany, from the Central University of Punjab, Batinda. So here my colleagues are present, Dr. Felix, Dr. Milan, Dr. KK, and Professor Mohesh is here with us from IIT Jodhpur. So I once again welcome you all to this lecture series, Blue Planet. This is celebrated based on the UN World Ocean Day. And as you know, this year, Ocean Day celebration, that the theme of the Ocean Day, World Ocean Day, that is innovation for sustainable ocean. And in here, the innovation is relating to the introduction of new methods, new idea, products, and these are the fundamental thing we should take into the consideration to have a sustainable ocean. So why we are so important, so much worried about ocean? If you see, there are many article people tell that we know about lot more about Mars, we know a lot more about Moon, but rather we have less knowledge about the deep ocean. So if you look at the Earth area, that area is area wise, the coverage wise, it's
Why?
70%.
Why?
So
Nakal. Money.
so if you see this, so the we are only we have much we have explored only the 20-30% of the Earth, much in larger scale. So we are very much dependent on the ocean. If you talk about the protein, it's the ocean is the largest source of the protein. Around 300 billion people, they depend on the protein from the ocean, and more than 3 billion of people, they are depend on the livelihood of the from the ocean and the coastal environment. And if you talk about the climate wise, this is around 30% of carbon dioxide what human is putting into the atmosphere, that is absorbed by the ocean. So, and if you look at the ocean circulation, the climate what we are talking about, largely the climate is governed by the ocean. It's not about the land part. Mostly it is dominated by the ocean, or the oceanic circulation and the interaction with the ocean atmosphere. So if you look at in terms of the contribution to the sustainability world, ocean play an important role for this particular concern. So this Ocean Day celebrated to create awareness, to put more effort for more scientific knowledge to explore the ocean. So today we all are here, and we'll under this particular lecture series, we will be having 6 lectures from the different part of the globe and from the different domain of the oceanography. And coming to the Department of Geology established in 2015 in the CUPB, Central University of Punjab, Batinda. And now we are already completed 5 year and 3 batch successfully completed, and people are well placed at different academic institute as well as in their job sector. So we are looking towards the to arrange such kind of programs so that we can create awareness. So now I will request my colleague Felix, Dr. Felix, to put few words before yeah, Dr. Felix, over to you.
Dr. Jiten, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm privileged to be part of this initiative from the Department of Geology as well as Department of Botany. I'm representing the Department of Botany today in this talk. And yes, the oceans matter immensely, though not many people talk about the ocean and ocean significance. One example usually I quote in my videos as well as to my students is that if you take breath, I ask everybody, I invite all the listeners, please take 3 breaths right now. 1, 2, and third. Now, out of 3 friends, 2 are coming from the ocean, but we completely forget what is actually happening in. In the Environment Day, usually the organizations, we plant trees, right? So we all do that every time, but the trees don't produce as much oxygen as planktons in the ocean. So 2 of the very important planktons are basically picoplankton. These are cyanobacteria, and the name of these cyanobacteria are Prochlorococcus and Cyanococcus. I tell again, Prochlorococcus and Cyanococcus. You might have never heard of this. These 2 cyanobacteria produce 66% of the oxygen in the air that we breathe, and we completely forget even about their existence. So there are so many issues now in the oceanic side. One biggest issue is something called ocean acidification, which not many people are aware of. Another main issue is the microplastics. Though we are not covering so many of these issues, I encourage you to, to sensitize yourself and your friends about the importance of the oceans, in the coming Ocean Day, that is tomorrow. And this series features several interesting talks, especially from by our INEOS team members. Two of our team members are now confirmed as speakers, as well as, a specialist from Cambridge University, the Department of Plant Sciences, as well as in the Leibniz Institute in Berlin, Germany. So it's going to be a fantastic, fully packed 3 days workshop. So please stay tuned, and I wish all the best, Dr. Jitendra. And let us actually stay tuned in this channel. Please listen to all the talks carefully. And and I have only one request to you all. In the chat box, please don't, keep on saying like good morning, good afternoon, hi all. So instead, you please be specific and ask the questions you want the panelists to answer. By doing that, you can increase the chances of your question being picked from the pool. There is another way to ask a question. You can ask in the Twitter and just use the hashtag blue planet without any space. So we will actually look the Twitter field as well. Thank you all, and keep listening. Over to you, Jitendra.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Felix. It was a nice introduction from your side. And now I'll invite Dr. KK to say a few words.
Hello, hi to everyone present on this platform. It was quite a surprise for me that at a very short time, our on-colleague Dr. Jitendra has, come up with this bright idea of having this lecture series in a very short time. So, and then also I must congratulate to Dr. Felix as well, that for me it's quite new in the university, in the whole system, and then at the same time I'm also having this kind of opportunity to mingle with you all and then learn, other subjects through the platform like this. So it's a great privilege to be part of today's meeting as such. As the Dr. Felix rightly mentioned about the issues that we are facing across the globes, the oceans across the globe. One thing that I also have in my mind is the increasing the plastic contamination in the marine environment and leading to serious problems across the environment. So that is the one thing that we should be focusing in future, near future research as a part of the scientific world. So that is one thing I must share my thought at this point of time. And also being a geologist, that we always look into rocks and minerals that is present in the bottom of the sea. So we can we can try to correlate with all these aspects in terms of rocks and minerals, whatever is there in the sea floor, and then try to come up with great solution to have a clear and then an absolute free the ocean environment in near future. So it's a great privilege for me once again to be part of this platform. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. KK, for your nice word, and it's regarding the N1 ocean pollution. Yes, really, this microplastic and plastics are real threat to different marine organism as well as the ocean environment. Thank you so much to being with us. And now I'll request Dr. Milan to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. I hope that these webinars will be very helpful to our students, research scholars, and other faculty. Of course, the ocean is very important for all of us, and we know that the marine biodiversity is in danger in some, especially in some of the part of the Indian context. Also, I hope that some of the speakers will also emphasize on the present scenario on the marine pollutions and what to say the extinctions and endangered conditions of the marine species throughout the globe also. And I, I wish all of you to have a nice day and to learn a lot of the ocean science. Thank you all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Milan, for your thought. Now I will invite Professor Mahesh from IIT Jodhpur, so to say few words. Yes, Dr. Mahesh.
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate Jitender and Felix for organizing this very wonderful lecture series. I would like to tell briefly about the INEAS to our viewers. INEAS was founded in 2014 by the INSA Council and came into existence by selecting 20 founding members, and now the founding member is the basically alumni this year. So we have completed 5 years in Feb basically. So our membership strength is there. This one is the 100. Every year we add 20 members and their tenure is for 5 years. So always basically INEAS is young. Once the members completed 5 years, then they will go to the alumni. And if you see overall, our membership around 10 to 12% members are from the earth and ocean sciences. So always basically INEAS is focusing on all branches, including the ocean sciences. If you see this one, basically SDGs, out of 17 SDGs, around 3 to 4 cover the basically ocean science, water under life, renewable energy. Again, all these are related basically water related with the ocean directly or indirectly here. So I think this one is the wonderful series, and I hope all viewers will enjoy this lecture series. So thank you INEAS and the Central University of Punjab for coming up with this idea and organizing this lecture series. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mahesh. Yes, it was indeed pleasure for us to have with us. And yes, in this series, nearly 1,300 participants have already registered. So we are hopeful that this series, the 3 days lecture series, it will be fully packed and brainstorming session will be there. So it will be beneficial to the young researcher and young mind, and they should be more aware about the ocean and how we can build the sustainable ocean. Okay, so thank you very much, and I will now invite Felix to announce yes, regarding the timing.
Yes, thank you, Patnaik ji. And I just want to add on that Dr. Mahesh is basically the second chair of the INEAS. So that actually missed out in the introduction part. And yes, so he served as chair for the last 2 years, preceding 2 years. Only this year it has been taken over by Dr. Chandrasekhar Sharma, and Dr. Sharma is now, perhaps he is going to join us in the closing ceremony. And Dr. Mahesh is also a fellow of, member of the Global Young Academy, another very prestigious academy based in Germany. So thanks a lot, Dr. Mahesh, for joining today, despite your busy schedule. Yes, and we are part of the INEAS family, irrespective of alumni status. So we can still work together. And of course, that binds us all together, the INEAS staff. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so I suggest everybody, please grab a cup of coffee and be right back. So we are now closing the inauguration ceremony, and we will be right back at 11 o'clock. So our first talk, could you please say a few words, Dr. Jiten, over to you about who is our first talk and what is the title of the talk?
Yes. I'll just share the screen now. Allow me to share. Can you see the slide? Is it
Yes,
visible?
yes,
Okay.
yes, it's visible.
So our first talk will be by Dr. Rajiv Saraswat. Now he is working as a principal scientist at National Institute of Oceanography, and he has a lot of experience in the research, mostly in the marine environment, where he's basically focused on the paleo environment, paleoclimate, based on the different kind of ocean, different type of proxy from the ocean. So in this talk, he will be talking about how ocean can act as a archive of paleo climate. So he has many award to his credit. He was INSA Young Scientist Award in 2013, CSR Young Scientist Award in 2011, Indian Science Academy Young Scientist Award in 2007, and he was INEAS member and ex-national CC member also. He has experience at NCOR Goa. Also, he has served as assistant professor at Delhi University. He has around more than 63 publications to his credit. Today we'll be listening to him around at 11 o'clock. Yes.
Yeah, I would like to add Jitender one line in this one. He is a wonderful speaker and he is one of the founding member of INEAS basically, and the CC also has CC member, and they have worked a lot to build this organization.
Okay.
So,
yes, thank you, Dr. Miles. Thank you so much. Yes, we are eager to hear him at 11 hours.
Yes, great, Dr. Jiten. Yes, let us wait for his talk. He is yet to come. So yes, I told you, please, relax for a while. We will be shorting the session within next few minutes. So we are not closing this YouTube, and please stay right in this, the window, and I will see you all. So yes.
Hello.
Yes, Jitin, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Okay. So just now I had a talk with our today's speaker, Rajiv Saraswat. He will take 3 to 4 minutes to join us. He's having some technical issue, so please bear with us. Within 3 to 4 minutes, he will join with us.
Jiten, can you see me? Hello,
Hi
Jiten.
Rajiv. Hi Rajiv.
Hi, can you see me?
No, your video is off. I can hear you, but video is
Is it
not.
fine now?
Yes, yes. Light is little bit less, but
Okay,
okay.
wait.
Okay. Yes, yes, yes. I can see you. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, do you remember me?
Just a minute.
No, I think you
Yeah,
must have.
sure, man. Why not?
I was in Delhi University as a research scholar while you were there in Delhi University.
Yeah.
I was working under Professor Ben Baspa at that time
Okay.
as a
Okay.
research scholar.
Uh-huh. Nice to see you after a long time.
Yeah, same here, sir.
Yeah, Jiten, I'm really very
Okay.
sorry for this problem. I don't know. Somehow I had
Okay.
some issue with
Okay.
power.
No problem. So some technical problems is there. So now you are ready with your presentation.
Yeah, sure. I'm
Okay.
ready.
Okay. So hello everyone. Sorry for the late. So there was some technical issue, so we couldn't avoid. And now with us we have today's speaker, the first speaker, Dr. Rajiv Saraswat. As I have already introduced, but those have joined later. So for them, I just once again I will introduce today's speaker, Dr. Rajiv Saraswat. He has completed his PhD from Goa University in collaboration with NIO. Then he served as a scientist at NCUR, earlier name. Now it is NCPUR, and he served as assistant professor at Delhi University. Now he is working at NIO, National Institute of Oceanography, Goa, as a principal scientist. He is a renowned scientist in the paleoclimate and the paleoceanography area. And today he will talk about the ocean, how the ocean will be an excellent archive for studying the paleoceanography, paleoclimate, and various issues. And he has many awards and honors to his credit. He was INSA Young Scientist Awardee in 2013, CSR Young Scientist Award in 2011, ISA Young Scientist Awardee in 2007. He was the founding member. Those who have attended earlier, or Dr. Professor Mahesh also clarified me that he was the founding member of INEAS, and he served as National Core Committee member in the INEAS. And in terms of research, he has more than 63 publications in the very good, very impactful journal, national and international journal. So today we have with us Dr. Rajiv Saraswat, and we are looking forward to hear you from you, Rajiv. So now it's over to Rajiv. Please start.
Thanks a lot,
You can share
Jiten.
your screen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jiten. I'm really very sorry that because of some hiccups over here, it's getting delayed by almost 15-20 minutes. I sincerely apologize for that. Thanks,
Okay.
Jiten and
Yes,
Felix, for
thank you.
starting this, organizing this webinar for all the people, especially on the World Ocean Day. It's really very good that you are increasing the awareness about the oceans amongst the people. I'll be talking about the oceans a bit and how they are an excellent climate archive. We all talk about climate. I doubt there is hardly anyone who is not aware about the climate change. That's what we usually talk about. And oceans really help us a lot in understanding the climate change. How do they help? That's what I'll try to emphasize upon in this brief talk. I hope you can see the slides now. Jitin, can you confirm, please?
Jitin, you should.
Slide is
Jitin,
not
could you please
visible.
exit? Jitin, could you please exit your window? Then only he can share.
Yeah, it says you cannot start share.
Yeah, now you can do that now. Yes, we can see your screen. Perfect.
Yep. So as I was saying that I'll be talking about how the oceans help us in understanding the past and the climate, especially how they act as an excellent climate archive. I'm sure this is what we all have seen, the planet Earth. I mean, I don't know, at times when I ask the students in some lectures and I ask them, have you ever seen the Earth? Somehow they get buzzed. And then there is hardly anyone who says that, yes, they have seen the Earth. Maybe they try to imagine the Earth like this, that they have not seen, but yes, we walk on Earth, we live on Earth, everything we do on Earth only. So we see the Earth almost every day. And as they say, and even the title of this webinar is Blue Planet. You can see our Earth looks almost blue. And it's basically because almost 70% of the Earth is covered with the oceans. And it's only the small parts on land which are 30%, but all of this is oceans. Oceans, almost everybody is fascinated about. Given a choice, I think almost everybody would like to live or rather have a flat or bungalow right next to the coast. That is what is the fascination we all have. But when it comes to oceans as a climate archive, I mean, the question comes up, why the hell are we interested in the climate archives? Past climate, what for? Are we really getting affected by anything? So let's look at the climate change. And I'm sure it's hardly any part of our life that's not getting affected by the ensuing climate change. Although when it comes to climate change, we normally only think of excess rain, less rain, more rain, or say floods or drought somewhere. But definitely that's not the only thing that is associated with the climate change. As you can see, some of the titles of the papers that are listed over here, the climate change is affecting lots of aspects associated with our day-to-day lives, like say climate change and global malaria recession. Although few people talk about recession, but then there are other papers which talk about more instances of malaria because it seems the mosquitoes love the warmer conditions. Not only the diseases, but yes, the food that we eat, the wheat as well as the rice. It seems the climate change is affecting both the food grain production of the major cereals and the food that we eat. And of course, we do see the intense precipitation extremes or intense droughts, or wherein us during a small duration, we get to see a lot of rain, like we have seen in case of the Kerala floods. And then this year, of course, the monsoon has just started in Kerala and we do see some precipitation in Goa. But these events, it seems they are becoming more frequent. Now, the thing that we attribute this climate change is usually because of this, what we see over here, although it looks like with little more wriggles and ups and lows, but I'll try to explain that. It's the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. You might have often seen people talking about greenhouse gases and the main cause for global warming. People looked at the concentration of the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere in the past 800,000 years. Here I'm talking about 800,000 years. How do we get that record? I'll go into the details of that little later, but that's a record generated from ice cores. Ice traps the ambient air and that gets preserved for years. As you can see over here, that there is a record for 800,000 years of the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. Now that's the present, zero. Somewhere you can think of that as 2020, although this figure is from 2018. So let's look at the past first, then we will come to this part. If you see that there are variations from around maybe 280 to 70 ppmv, then it goes to 180, 170 ppmv. And that has been happening over the last 800,000 years. The carbon dioxide concentration increases to close to 280 to 70 ppmv, and then it goes down by around 180, by around 100 ppmv, becoming 180 ppmv, and then again it comes. That's what's something we call as glacial, interglacial variations. But what about this part? It's the year when we started our industrial revolution, close to around 1850s or 1860s. We started putting a lot of factories, we started steam engines, we started using coal and lots of fossil fuel. And that all led to an unprecedented increase in the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. And if you can see that little carefully, the increase since the Industrial Revolution is more than what used to happen naturally during the 100,000 years. Means 1 lakh years, the change was around 100 ppmv. And in the last 150 years, we have caused or increased the greenhouse gas concentration by almost 120 or 130 ppm. And that's a tremendous increase. It's because of this, people often say that the changes in the climate that we are seeing today, it's because we have contributed a lot of greenhouse gas concentration to the atmosphere. Let's try to look at the effect of these greenhouse gas concentrations. This is again a wiggly curve, but all India summer monsoon rainfall, which is about to begin in many parts, although it started in Kerala and of course in Goa as well. It's an average of that rainfall that we get over the years, starting from whenever we had those rain gauge stations. So it's from 1870 till around 2000. What we see, ups and downs are there, but there is no linear increase or decrease in the average precipitation. I'll repeat that. There is no linear increase or decrease in the annual average summer monsoon precipitation or the rains that we get in India in the last 130 or 140 years. But what we do see is a sort of a periodicity, and this periodicity is of roughly 60 years. What does this mean? That every 60 years we do see a concentration of more rain, and then again after in between there is less rain. Then again after 60 years we do see a concentration of more rainy years. We don't see any linear increase. Intriguingly, we also do not see a linear response of the ocean temperature or air temperature to greenhouse gases. If you see that, yes, although in general it looks like it's increasing, but then there are times wherever it has been flat for almost 40, 50 years. That means it's not linearly responding to the increasing greenhouse gas concentration, which are almost increasing year by year without any break. And what is the reason that these parameters are not responding to the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere linearly? It's because there is a lot of internal variability also. We need to understand that. So the main question comes up, how do we cope up with this climate change, and how do we understand what is causing this climate change? The instrumental record does not give us a clear picture. What about if we can go back in time, and why we need to go back in time, and how do we go back in time? And that all we do to answer the first question, like how we can mitigate or how we can be well prepared for the ensuing climate change. People try to predict the climate. Prediction means that what's going to happen in next 50 years or 100 years. And there is a consortia of lots of scientists from world over involved in any aspect of the climate change, physical, chemical, biological, modeling, all of them. There is this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change under the aegis of the United Nations. These people, they bring together new information generated in the last 4 or 5 years about the climate change, and then they try to model it and then predict what's going to happen in future. So they come up with certain estimates, like for example, for temperature. So we are right now somewhere in 2020, and then from here onwards, the model suggests that the temperature is going to increase by roughly 3.5 to 4 degrees centigrade in the next 80 years by around 2100. Since things are related on the earth, it's not only the temperature which is going to increase, it will also affect the sea level. And as we discussed just now, that people try to attribute that to the greenhouse gases, but then people also try to look at the relative contribution of different components, like how much of this CO2 is coming from the fossil fuel cement and flaring, and then how much is coming from the natural forestry or other land uses. Now, the obvious question that comes into everybody's mind is that how reliable are these estimates? And how do these people come up with these predictions about the future? Are they relevant? based on what they have developed these models. Is it really going to happen? Let's look at a little bit in the details of how do they develop these models. To put it in a lighter mode, there is a climate modeler who is sitting somewhere in his cabin without bothering what's happening around. And then what he tries to do, he tries to understand the relationship between different components of the climate. Like how much is the solar radiation that we are receiving? And then if there is a change in the solar radiation, how is it related to the greenhouse gases? If there is a change in greenhouse gases, how is it related to the sea surface temperature? And then other parameters like movement of the water from one place to another place. How is it related to the evaporation and precipitation? So they try to understand the relationship between all of these components and then put those relationships into a model. And then they run this model by imagining that at least one of these parameters can be quantified for future. Like for example, we know how much the population is going to increase in future and accordingly what will be the greenhouse gas concentration. So they try to put that parameter into the models and try to predict for the future. They come up with certain estimates, like for example, few years back, people suggested rainfall temperatures had to go up in India, and they suggested that it may increase by 3 to 4 degrees centigrade. Now, again, the question comes up about the reliability of this. How do we test that what they're talking about future is really going to happen or not? Is there a way to find out whatever they're talking about future is correct? The answer is yes, we can ask them to simulate the climate variations. We know how the climate has changed in the last 100, 150 years. So definitely, if we can ask them, okay, tell us what was the temperature and how the rainfall was 50 years back, 100 years back. If the model accurately predicts that or accurately simulates that, we may think that yes, the models are correct and whatever they're talking about future may also be correct. Unfortunately, the climate change is limited during the recent past. We don't see much variation. The temperature has hardly increased by 0.75 to 1 degree centigrade in the last 100, 150 years. In such a scenario, if somebody is talking about the temperature increase by 3 to 4 degrees centigrade, that seems little unrealistic. But Earth is not 150 years old. We know Earth has a huge or long history. There, can we go back in time and try to see if something similar has happened in the past? That's what we call as geologic past. And we try to explore how things were in the geologic past. And in order to do that, what we need is indirect methods because, as I said, humans were not there. Nobody was recording the climatic conditions. So we have to rely on indirect estimates, indirect techniques called proxies. Now, to give you an idea about the proxies, what they are, a little bit of, again, to put things into context, how going back into climate archives is important. I hope almost everyone is interested about future. We want to know what is going to happen in future. Like right now, we want to know when the corona is going to end. Other than that, few people who are not in job, they want to see when they are going to get a job. Those who are not married, they want to know when they are going to get married. Now, we try to do that. There are a lot of people who try to say that, yes, I can tell you about your future. So-called Jyotishi or Bhatt or Panditji or soothsayers. Now, imagine if a person like that comes to you and he tells you that, okay, I know about your future and I can tell you about your future. You want to test whatever he's going to talk about your future is correct or not. Is there a way to test that? Yes, there is. You know about your life. We all are roughly, say, 15, 20 years old, 20, 25, 30 years old. You ask him, okay, tell me something about my past. And if he tells you, okay, when you were 12 years old or 13 years old, you met with an accident or you were severely sick. You call up your mother or father and ask them whether it has really happened. They say, yes, but how do you know now? Well, yes, somebody told me. So if the person tells you accurately about your past, then you start believing that, yes, he is using some model, some method by which he can tell me about my present. That's what is the job of the paleoclimatologist or the people who try to reconstruct how the climate was in the past. That they try to reconstruct conditions in the past, and then they provide this scenario to climate modelers, and climate modelers use that information to fine tune or to tweak the models in order to accurately predict what is going to happen in future. Okay, so I hope all of you are convinced that yes, it's important to understand the climate of the past. But then the question comes up, how do we understand the climate of the past? Let's again look at with a very general example. There is a picture on your screen, people with a relatively dark complexion. The first thing that comes to our mind is that probably these people are from somewhere in Africa. And that comes because we know somewhere at the back of our mind that dark complexion usually comes or is an indicative of the warmer climate, tropical climate, equatorial climate, where the temperature is very high, relatively very high. So that's the information that our mind is processing right now, just by looking at them, that you can just by looking at the complexion, you can easily imagine that these people represent relatively warm condition. You will see another picture on your screen right now, people with fair complexion. And the thing that comes to our mind again is that probably these people represent a relatively colder climate, European climate, American climate. There is no temperature written on any one of their faces. But yes, just by looking at the complexion, we are talking about climate of the region. And this is how we develop the proxies. We look at the present, we try to see some of the features that are there in the field, and we try to relate that with the ambient conditions, whatever is there. And then that's how we develop the proxies. Like right now, we are looking at an example, imaginary example of the complexion being used as a climate proxy. Now, let's try to use that. Of course, it's all imaginary. We know the moment we bury somebody, there is hardly anything left of the human beings, but I'm just trying to convince you to stretch your imagination a little bit and then imagine for the time being that yes, they get preserved like that. Let's try to look at how do we understand the past climate by using similar proxies. Okay, so there is a deep graveyard. Somebody has digged it up for some reason. So these are the different layers deposited over different times. Of course, we know that while we are going deep, we are going back in time. Means these are the oldest sediments, oldest layers, and then these are the youngest. In the modern times, we see people have the darker complexion. Going back to the proxy that we just discussed, we can easily find out that yes, this area has relatively warmer climate as on today. And since it's a graveyard, imagine that people are buried, and then stretching your imagination a little bit, that people are buried as such as they were living. So we start digging this graveyard and we start seeing people buried over there. Now, in all of these layers, we find people with fair complexion buried. Let's go back a little more deep. Then we find people with fair complexion buried in these layers. Let's go a little deeper. And then somehow we again find people with the darker complexion. A few layers of people buried with the fair complexion, and then again with the darker complexion. Now, the technique that we developed, with that we can easily imagine the climatic conditions during different times. Like all of this time when these sediments were deposited over the in the graveyard, conditions were warm because we are seeing people with darker complexion buried over there. But when these sediments were deposited, when going back in time, since we find people with fair complexion buried over there, so we will infer that the climate was milder over there, the temperature was comparatively lower. Similarly, we will say that during this time, the temperature was warmer, then colder, but warmer. But is it so simple? Definitely no. There are lots of other caveats or things that you have to take care. Like, is there a possibility of these people being visiting this area? We do see lots of tourists. Imagine some tragedy happened and then they died and then people buried them over there. So that's also the case in the real proxies that we use, that material may get transported. So we have to rule out the possibility of transport of the material. Second thing is, of course, it's more a technical term, paleogeography. We know that the land mass we are sitting today, like say India, it was far down south, close to Antarctica at some point of time. Now, of course, at that time, humans were not there. but we have to rule out that possibility that land mass has not moved from one place to another place in case we want to use the climate change as a proxy. If we rule out these two, then definitely the changes that we are seeing are basically because of the climate change, and these people represent warmer and then colder and then warmer like that climate. Now, of course, as I told you in the beginning that we were just imagining that people are buried like that, but that's not the case, definitely not the case. The moment you bury somebody, it's hardly the bones which remain for some time, and after some time, even bones are not found. So we are not a good proxy to understand past climate from the oceans. The proxies that normally people use on land and in ocean, there are a few examples. People can recognize this. They are corals. Corals are an excellent archive because they add one layer every year. So we can see the chemical composition of that layer every year and then can tell about the climate during that particular year. But unfortunately, corals are only confined to very shallow water and only tropical regions. That means if we are trying to look at the climate from high latitudes or some other places, corals may not be that useful. On land, some of the best proxies are tree rings. We know trees add a ring, certain types of trees, they add a ring every year. The thickness of the ring, the composition of the ring tells us about the climate of the year in which this ring was made. We can look at the chemical composition and then we can find out what was the temperature, how much was the moisture or precipitation during the year in which this layer was secreted. Like that, in the oceans, we find lots of small creatures. They live in the ocean water or in the ocean sediments. And then they have some hard parts called skeletons. Unlike the skeleton we have inside our body, majority of them have an exoskeleton, means a skeleton is outside their soft part. Soft part is protected inside the hard part. So these skeletons are quite sturdy, not like you can hammer them, they will survive, no, but yes, they can survive the harsh conditions that are there in the ocean. They settle down in the sediments and they are preserved for millions and millions of years. But the proxy, which is the most relevant and most important, are the ice cores. Any idea how much is the ice core thickness in Antarctica? It's in fact more than 3 kilometers. Imagine a 3-kilometer thick ice, and people have drilled it right up to the bottom. And that gave us almost the annual record of the atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations. Of course, ice is not there everywhere, but then oceans are something which cover almost every length and breadth of this earth. It's the reason wherein, we can use the oceans or something preserved in the oceans to understand the climate from almost every part of the earth. Let's get back to the oceans. How do we get things into the ocean and how do they act as a climate archive? How do we understand the past climate from the oceans? It's just a profile. Say, imagine you are roaming on a beach, and then you try to imagine how the profile is if you go towards the ocean. Please don't do that. Actually, don't start walking towards the ocean because it gets deeper and deeper. But if you try to imagine from the beach, it slopes, it's a shelf, narrow shelf, then all of a sudden comes the slope and then the abyssal plain. The way material get accumulated in the ocean, there are several ways. Like we get all those rivers that bring the material every year. Then there is wind, which brings the material into the ocean. And then, as I said a few moments back, that there are these tiny organisms which are living in the ocean surface. All of this material and these remains of the organisms which die, they settle down in the ocean bottom. And like that, sediments are getting deposited year after year. It's easy to understand that the layer at the bottom will be the oldest and the one at the surface will be the youngest. But how do we get it? What we do, we take a small ship and try to take a section of these sediments. So we get from younger to older sediments by using certain gadgets or the equipments. I'll show you a figure of that. And then we bring those sediments back. How do we collect these sediments? It's quite simple. Like we have those ships. That's the Sagar Kanya. We use this ship for a very, very long time. It is still in use and it's being manned by Ministry of Earth Sciences. The National Institute of Oceanography has its own couple of ships. One of them is Sindhu Sadhana. It's a relatively new ship, almost 5 years old. And that's the one we are using very frequently these days. And as I was telling you that we collect these sediments, this is how we collect those sediments from the ocean bottom. This is an iron pipe with a heavy weight on the top and a PVC liner inside. This entire gravity corer, it is called, and then this gravity corer is lowered with the help of a wire. This wire length is almost 7-8 kilometers, so you can reach up to the ocean bottom anywhere. It touches the ocean bottom because of the heavy weight on the top. It penetrates inside the sediments. Sediments get collected inside or filled up inside the pipe which is there inside, and then we bring this on board. So we get this entire pipe filled with the sediments, and we use those sediments to understand the past climate. Now, to give you a glimpse of a real proxy that's used, like here is an example. It's a bit of a chemistry, like these tiny organisms which I was talking about a few minutes back, those calcareous organisms, they also have some trace elements like say magnesium, barium, cadmium, boron. The incorporation of these trace elements into the calcareous test depends on the ambient conditions. For example, the incorporation of magnesium into the skeletons of those tiny organisms depends on how cold or warm is the temperature. Warmer is the temperature, more magnesium gets incorporated into the calcium carbonate that these tiny organisms called foraminifera, they secrete. So there is this empirical relationship that with the increasing temperature, the ratio of magnesium by calcium increases. So what we have now is a proxy to reconstruct absolute seawater temperature in the past. We can take out those tiny organisms, analyze their magnesium by calcium ratio, and by using these equations, we can convert this ratio into absolute temperature. Similarly, we can also find out the seawater pH. We can quantify seawater pH by using the boron isotopic ratios. Have we used that somewhere? Yes, just a few examples. Like this was a record, like a core, in which we could go back to 130,000 years back. So it was a record of 130,000 years, and we quantified the seawater temperature of the last 130,000 years by using the magnesium by calcium ratio. What we got to know is that around 18 to 20,000 years back, temperature was cold by around 2.5 to 3 degrees centigrade as compared to the modern times. And then again, there was a time 125,000 years back, 125,000 years back, when the temperature was as warm as it is today, almost as warm as it is today, although we were not there. Because of the natural variability, temperature was comparable at least to the pre-industrial times. We also looked at another record in detail, and we could see that yes, there is another interesting finding about the temperature and the greenhouse gas concentration, that there seems to be a sort of a lag between the increase of the atmospheric greenhouse gas concentration when we start coming out of the glacial conditions. We know there is something called glacial, interglacial intervals on the Earth. I'll go explain that little detail in a little more time. But then there seems to be like we start getting warmer conditions first, then the CO2 starts increasing, although these results have to be verified further. Now, such records have been generated from all over the Earth for years and years together. Many people have used that for reconstructed the climatic conditions from all over the Earth. And then I'll just show you a bit of a compilation of all that record, what we know about the Earth's past and how these oceans have helped in understanding or reconstructing the Earth's past. So it's just a brief history of the Earth, right from the beginning till the time that we are on the Earth right now. I hope this movie plays. Okay, I'll just try to this one. As you can see that after the Big Bang, which is supposed to be around 13.6 billion years ago, our Earth slowly started forming by those small, small particles coalescing together. By around 4.6 billion years ago, we had something like this. And then another planet seems to have hit us, which removed a part of the Earth which was about to form. And that part which was removed became moon and it started revolving around us. That's how we seem to have got our moon. Initially, Earth was quite warm, almost hot, bombarded by lots of meteorites from all over the place. There were no oceans initially. Slowly, the conditions ameliorated, oceans formed, and it seems the initial building blocks of the life formed in those primordial oceans. Those small, small units of life, they started joining together, and then the temperature decreased drastically, almost like covering the entire Earth, something called snowball Earth. Then the temperature again increased, conditions became little more favorable. We had well-developed oceans by that time, and then life started in that ocean with the, of course, eukaryotic forms initially. Then we had a huge proliferation of the life forms at around in the beginning of something called 543 million years back. All the ancestors of the life forms that we see today, they arose during that time. And then slowly life started evolving. Over those times, we got forests on the land, huge trees, big trees. Then we had the Earth's rotation with almost 22 hours. And then the vertebrates appeared, those with the backbone. And then they also had legs. During all of that time, the life was on the ocean, but then some of those creatures decided to move on to the land. And then that's how the life on land also started. Life migrated from the ocean to land. And of course, this was the time when we had the dinosaurs called Triassic, Jurassic, Cretaceous times. You all have seen Jurassic Park. That's how all of those huge, humongous dinosaurs were. Unfortunately, it seems a huge block of rock hit the earth, and that almost wiped out all the dinosaurs from the earth. It created conditions wherein dinosaurs could not survive. They had nothing to eat, and then a majority, almost all of them wiped out. But it was the dinosaurs which were affected the most, but other life forms continued and they survived. And they evolved into different life forms. That's how we got other life after the extinction or complete wiping of out of the dinosaurs. Mammals started, placental mammals evolved, and then our great grandfathers, those chimpanzees, orangutans roaming in the jungle, they were also there. They somehow evolved into our own relatively more recent ancestors. That's how we probably looked like few millions years back. And then around 70,000 years or little later than that, we started living in the caves and started the agriculture around 11,000 years back. That's all information we get from the archives which are present in the oceans or on ocean floors, in ocean sediments. It's a tremendous information that we get. Of course, this is all historical part, which we all know through our history books, how things have changed since humans started keeping the record. So that's the power of or the wealth of information that we get from the oceans, which are there and preserving all the records of the climate change. Now, let's try to look at this in a little more nutshell. How things have changed in little more detail and how does it affect the humans and how is it related to the human beings. Now, if we divide the entire history of the earth, which is around 4.6 billion years into 24 hours, one day, then what we know that for larger part of that time, humans were not at all there. In fact, life was not there. The more complex evolved forms were not there at least until this 543 million years, or just before that, something called Ediacara. Humans evolved just a few seconds back. And in the present form, we are here only for 10,000 years, which is nothing as compared to the Earth's history, which is 4.6 billion years. And lots of things have happened on the Earth. Let's try to look at the major takeaway points from this history of the Earth. We know that the temperature was warmer, much warmer than present. This is the present day temperature. It was almost 6 to 7 degrees centigrade warmer than present millions of years back. Somebody can say that, okay, humans were not there. Why was it so? It's because of the natural variability. And then it's only almost, you can see until this part, the temperature was warmer, and it's only in this part around 10,000 to few millions years back that the temperature became comparable to what we see today. That's one big information that we get from those climate archives that we dig from the oceans. But having said that part, we also get to know that whenever there was a change in temperature, almost invariably, there was a change in the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration. You see an increase in the temperature, we see an increase in the greenhouse gas concentration. We see a low in the temperature, we see a low in the greenhouse gas concentration. That means the temperature on the Earth and the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere are closely coupled. They can't vary independent of each other. If one is changing, other is going to change now, which is the cause, which is the effect. Of course, it's just a matter of little more understanding. What we also know on a shorter time scale that we do see something like a periodic change. That's the time, say this is modern time, and we are going back in time to 200,000 years, 400,000 years, 600,000 years. And what we see that the temperature was much more lower, say around 20,000 years back, and then slowly it increased, but then again it was lower. So these are called something called glacial interglacial transitions. That means we go into an ice age and then we come out of the ice age. That's how it happens every time. What causes this glacial interglacial transitions is a matter of, again, a huge research. But what we see during those glacial interglacial transitions is that the ice sheets in the northern hemisphere or in southern high latitudes, they increase. So this is a glacial condition. See the white patches, the ice sheet extent, and then that's how it decreases during the interglacial time. But now the obvious question is, both of them were not there. Then what caused this climate change, such a huge climate change, that we had huge ice sheets and they vanished, then again reappeared, then again vanished? And the answer lies somewhere in the glacial interglacial transitions. And the cause of that major change is, again, the major source of the energy on Earth. We know we get major source of the energy on Earth because of the sun. And then there is a change in the amount of energy that we receive from the sun that changes. And because of those changes, we do get those glacial interglacial transitions. So we, although feel that the sun keeps on moving around the Earth, but it is not static. It keeps on changing. The position of the Earth with respect to sun keeps on changing. That's how it changes on 100,000 years, sometimes on 20,000 years. The tilt of the axis of the Earth also keeps on changing. And then the way this axis wobbles also changes. So these were the major factors which causes those glacial interglacial transitions. So the takeaway message from looking at those archives preserved in the oceans is that Earth was here for long, and I'm sure it will be there for quite some time. We means humans, came on Earth just a short while ago. And I'm not sure for how long we are going to be here. We may not exist for long if we continue to do whatever we are doing. Greenhouse gases, of course, they are important for us. We can't survive without them. But excess of it is really going to make our life on Earth very, very difficult. I do see people talking often about let's save Earth. I don't know. I mean, we can't do anything to Earth. We can't destroy Earth. We can't do anything to save Earth. It's definitely a matter of our own survival. We really need to understand that we are trying to do things over here to survive ourselves. How do we survive? Unless we understand that, we will not realize what we need to do to keep the conditions livable on the Earth. That's where I'll stop. I'll stop sharing the screen here. And then let's see, I'll hand over to Jiten. If there are any questions I can take. I hope I am
Thank
just
you.
finished right in time. Still it's 12. I'm sorry I can't take. I don't know whether there's time to take a few questions.
Yes, yes. We have. Thank you so much, Rajiv. There are a lot of questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay, it was a really wonderful talk, and you have covered nicely with different various aspects related to the ocean and the climate and the paleoclimate. It's a really wonderful talk. So I will. There are if I see the list, it's around more 45 or more than that questions are there.
Okay.
So I'll pick some of the interesting question over here to ask you. Uh, yeah. So one question was like one student has asked, how does glacial interglacial transition affect sedimentary deposition in monsoon dominated region like India? This question is from Ram Deepak.
I hope, Ram, you are listening to that. I mean, it's a very interesting question. I'm sure you are a geology student, probably pursuing PhD. So looks like your research topic, which has something to do with the monsoons and sedimentation in the Indian Ocean. We looked at that. In fact, we published a paper a few years back. We tried to look at how the amount of sediments that are deposited in the oceans changes on glacial interglacial timescale. And to our utter surprise, we did not see a huge change in the sedimentation rate. Of course, see, during glacial time, it's supposed that the summer monsoon, which brings in almost 80% precipitation today, was much weaker. So it's quite obvious that if there is less rain, there will be less precipitation on the land. It will erode less of sediments. Those less sediments will go into the river, and then less sediments will come into the ocean. If the monsoon is more vigorous, more sediments will be eroded, and then more sediments will be brought into the ocean. So we know for sure that during the glacial times, the summer monsoon was much weaker. So we had less precipitation, at least in the Indian subcontinent. So there were less amount of sediments being brought into the nearby oceans. That's how I can tell you, but I can also, you can look at the paper published by Dharmendra Pratap Singh, and there were few more workers, and then they try to look at that into more detail. I hope I could answer your question.
Thank you, Rajiv. I hope it is clear to Ram. And now, yeah, Felix.
Yeah, Rajiv, could you please exit your presentation window? I can still see your PowerPoint slide. You can just exit so we can see your face clearly.
Sure.
You would have to hover on the top and exit the PowerPoint.
Stop sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, very nice. So thank you so much. Yeah, Rajiv, it is really nice, and I really like so many analogies that you use. And yeah, I think it's one of the best science communication talk which I actually listened to date. It's really wonderful. So without wasting much time, so let me go back to the pool of questions. So many interesting questions are there. Well, one question is asked by Ram Deepak. By the way, this program is now being watched by more than 350 participants, so quite happy. And yes, lots of interesting questions coming up. Ram Deepak is asking a question. What is the role of Northeast Pacific meltwater event in deglacial climate change? So it's kind of not exactly a related question, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, this guy seems to be doing research on the related.
Yeah, perhaps.
So I can easily find out. I mean, yes, Ram, again, these melt events that we see in the high northern latitudes, say Arctic, or in the high southern latitudes, they are definitely reflected in the monsoon and the circulation in the Indian Ocean as well. the meltwater pulse, that's what they are often called as after the glaciations, because ice sheets have increased tremendously. And then a slight trigger, most likely a slight perturbation in the solar insolation, that melts a huge chunk of that ice sheet, and that ice sheet melts and then goes into the ocean. That's what is called as the meltwater pulse. Of course, yes, because those meltwater pulse perturb the ocean circulation, something called thermohaline circulation. You know, the northern high latitudes or Antarctic is the trigger for the thermohaline circulation in combination with something that we have in Antarctica. So any perturbation in the Arctic or in the Antarctic will definitely be transmitted over a period of 100 to 1,000 years, almost all parts of the world oceans. And that's how we do see that in the Indian Ocean as well. So yes, there are signatures. It does lead to relatively less precipitation in certain parts of the northern Indian Ocean.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rajiv. Nicely you have explained the thing. And one more question I will pick from this poll, that is from Pratik Khanna. Why is CO2 concentration cyclic in the past?
Yeah, I mean, that's again a very obvious question. I mean, of course, now you can blame us. We can say humans are increasing the concentration. But why the hell almost 100 ppm we change in the past? Of course, again, I'll go back to the oceans. Oceans were the major driver of that change of the 100 ppmv CO2 concentration that we see on glacial, interglacial timescales. Oceans have something called productivity. There are small phytoplanktons and there are zooplanktons which feed on those phytoplanktons. So the number or the population of those phytoplanktons increases tremendously during certain times, and that is what is supposed to have happened in the Southern Ocean during the glacial times. So the productivity of those the population of those phytoplanktons increased manyfold in the Southern Ocean during the glacial times. When those phytoplanktons make their body, you know, our body is mainly comprised of carbon. So they sequester the carbon, and then that carbon goes down and settles down into the sediments. And that also goes down into the deeper parts of the ocean water. Circulation was sluggish. Deep water was not getting rejuvenated. So the CO2 remained in the deeper ocean and then in the sediments. That's how the oceans were the major driver of the change that we see in the glacial, interglacial time scale of those 100 ppmv in the atmospheric CO2 concentration.
Thank
Yes,
you, Rajiv.
very interesting answer, Rajiv. And yes, and I'm also thankful to many of our students. Actually, they're volunteering, picking up the moderating the discussion sections. One of the students I would like to express my thanks for this event is Rashmita Luha. She has been doing fantastic work, and she herself is asking one interesting question. So, is it possible that ocean can re-normalize the climate effect if lockdown continues and no further interference is allowed in the oceans?
Yeah, I mean, that's a possibility. I was discussing with my group of those PhD students that we were there in NIO that, okay, what are the possible consequences of the lockdown? I mean, do we really see any change in the air quality, or do we see something in the oceans? I think that's too short an interval to see any measurable change, especially in the ocean. So far, of course, efforts are on. We will be coming up with those details little later. But yes, we have to do a global lockdown and a continuous lockdown. If we can do that, of course not. In India, people have already started crying that, yes, this is really creating a lot of havoc for us. So we definitely cannot have a global lockdown and persistent lockdown. But yes, what I would suggest that is like each one of us should try to decrease our carbon footprint. Definitely that we can do by not using the cars frequently, by using the public transport frequently, trying to switch over to renewable means of energy rather than being dependent on the fossil fuel. If each one of us start doing that, probably that will be much more long lasting than the measures like lockdown. Definitely that cannot be done forever. But yes, there are reports that the air quality seems to have improved at certain locations because of the lockdown. But in the oceans, we are yet to see the effects of the lockdown. So, I mean, although the question seems to be hypothetical, like if it goes on forever, of course, it's not going to go on. But yes, if it goes on forever and if it is global, then definitely we will see the effects in the oceans as well.
Okay. Thank you, Rajiv, for your nice explanation. I hope it clears the doubt. And there are a lot of questions, but yeah, uh, if we pick a question that is about the carbon sequestration, how this carbon sequestration, that artificial carbon sequestration, when people are talking about in the ocean, so whether it is going to affect any marine fauna or marine organism. This question is from Munmi Bortake. Yes.
Yes, I mean, there are lots of, I would say, climate engineering methods suggested worldwide to mitigate the increasing carbon dioxide concentration that we see in the atmosphere. We also know that carbon is important for all of us. We can't survive if there is no carbon dioxide. If you remove all the carbon dioxide from the Earth's atmosphere, the temperature will drop down to minus 20, 25 degrees centigrade, which no one of us can survive. So yes, we do need carbon on the Earth. So we can't sequester all the carbon out of the Earth's atmosphere, because then we will not be able to survive. So yes, carbon sequestration is important and definitely it will help. But right now we have to look at the amount of carbon sequestration that we can do. The measures suggested so far doesn't seem to be really very effective. We are not able to bring down substantially the amount of carbon dioxide that is there in the atmosphere by using the techniques that we have right now. So we really have to come up with certain techniques by which we can significantly sequester the carbon that is there in the atmosphere. Of course, a lot of people are trying to put in efforts in that direction by putting certain types of chemical sequesters right in front, I mean, at the exhaust of the factories and wherever there is coal being used as a fuel. So those efforts are definitely on, but then we really, as I said, we really need to sequester a very significant amount of carbon out of the atmosphere to start seeing the change of those new techniques on overall climate on the Earth.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Thank
Raj.
you, Rajiv.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's excellent answer to your question. So one of the question is that, well, by the way, we are actually running. We have already overshot the time, so we can have just final two questions. So I will just ask one of the, I would say, anti-penultimate question. It is by Thanya Lal. Thanya is asking, why are hyperactive cyclones recurrently being formed in the Bay of Bengal, like Falin, Hudhud, Titli Fani, and recently Amphan? Are there any relations with the oceanic climate change?
Definitely, there are lots of new papers that are coming up which suggest that there is an increasing tendency of not only more severe cyclones, but even the frequency of the cyclones. We know the upper ocean surface is very vital in the generation of a cyclone. The temperature of the ocean surface plays a very crucial and vital role in the development of the cyclones. So if the oceans are warming, anomalously warming, certain parts of it, as we know that the western side of the Indian Ocean is warming more than any other part of the Indian Ocean. So definitely those conditions are somehow responsible for the increasing frequency as well as the severity of the cyclones. There are lots of papers which are coming up. You can read those in detail, but yes, oceanic conditions are definitely responsible for increasing frequency and the intensity of the more severe cyclones that we are seeing now.
Okay, thank you, Rajiv, for a nice explanation. And now this is the last question for this session. This question, yes, this is about the forams. Yes, this is by Shamal Kuman. What are the application of foraminifera in paleoclimatology? It's one of the specialization of your work. So yes,
I
he
mean,
want to know about the climate, paleoclimate. Yes.
foraminifera are, I don't want to exaggerate, but yes, it's a fact that they are the backbone of the paleoclimatic studies from the oceans. The reason is that they are present almost everywhere. you take the beach sand, just put it under the microscope, you will see hundreds and hundreds of those tiny, beautiful shells we call test. They'll be there in those sediments. You move out in any part of the ocean, although below the carbonate compensation depth, there is something called CCD. Below that, the number decreases and only a certain type of the foraminifers are found there. But yes, till that depth, you will find them almost everywhere. They secrete the skeleton made up of calcium carbonate, and that is really very useful. The carbon isotopic ratio, the oxygen isotopic ratio, and other trace elements they incorporate, they are used to quantify the seawater temperature, as I gave an example of that. They are used to quantify seawater pH. Again, there was a very short example. They can be used to quantify productivity in the past. They can be used to reconstruct how the water mass was moving, something called thermohaline circulation. They can be used to reconstruct what was the, how much was the precipitation, whether there was more extreme precipitation or less precipitation in the past. In fact, they are also used in environmental monitoring because they are extremely sensitive to the ambient conditions. Any anomalous change in the heavy metals in their vicinity causes a tremendous change in the test and then their population. So foraminifers are extremely useful, not because I'm working on it. Of course, that also says a part of the reason that I'm trying to exaggerate that. But yes, it's a fact that yes, foraminifers are one of the most frequently used proxies as far as paleoclimatic reconstruction or even environmental monitoring is concerned. They are also useful in petroleum exploration because they tell us the environment of the deposition of the sediments. They tell us the age of the sediments, something called biostratigraphy. Foraminifers are very good biostratigraphic markers. You can get the age of the sediments, the conditions in which the sediments were deposited, and that tells us whether there is a possibility of finding oil in those sediments or not. So foraminifers have got tremendous applications in paleoclimate, paleoenvironment, and petroleum exploration.
Okay, thank you, Rajiv, for your nice talk as well as the question answer. It is such a long question answer discussion session, but you have come very properly. You have explained all the doubts. There are more than 45, but it is difficult to accommodate all the queries in this time period. But yes, we can share your email ID so that if they have any other query, they can ask. They can email to you. Yes, I will thanks again for your wonderful talk. And in a very short notice, you have agreed to be with us. And it is really wonderful to have in this particular, in the inaugural session, the first talk is yours. So yes, I also thank Dr. Felix to constant. He is the coordinator of this, one of the coordinator of this program. But he was behind me, he was pushing me to do this. So yes, I thank Dr. Felix, and I also thank Dr. Krishnakant, who is my colleague. He's an associate professor here in the Department of Geology. I also thank Dr. Milan. He's my colleague in the Department of Geology. Then I also thank Professor Mahesh from IIT Jodhpur to be with us in the inaugural session and as well as in this technical session, the first session. Rajiv, really, it was a wonderful talk. I hope all the participants, they have enjoyed your talk and they have clarified their doubt. And once again, I thank all the participants who are watching us in the YouTube and also whoever is here in the Zoom channel. Now I'm requesting Dr. Felix to say a few words. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Jiten. And it was really, I'm really humble to Dr. Rajiv for today's wonderful session. It was really amazing. It was really non-technical and as expected from an INEOS member. Because we have this genes for science communication. I am sure that you agree with that. And thank you so much. It was really wonderful. And we have such a big pool of questions. Everybody has got lots of curiosity-driven questions. So unfortunately, we couldn't accommodate all of that. And for the listeners and watchers throughout the world, so many people are watching this one. I have one request to all of you. Please, restrict your questions to the subject. There were so many questions on the biology. It is not exactly a biology related topic. So we have handpicked those questions kind of relevant to the subject. So please make sure that you can, post only the relevant questions from the next session onwards. So thank you once again, Dr. Rajiv, and I hand over to Patnaik. So you can speak a few words about next session. What is the title of the next talk and what time? Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Jiten. I'll just leave. I'm really very sorry that initial 10-15 minutes I just wasted because of the setup things. We didn't have a power and I had some issues in internet in my cabin. I really apologize for that. Thank you so much for calling me for
No
this.
problem. No problem.
Actually,
Such kind of technical issues generally arises. No problem.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, Jiten. Yeah.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice
Thank you. Hello, dear participant. We'll meet again at 3:30. So our next talk is on the seawater intrusion in the coastal aquifer. So what happens in the coastal environment? Many places, if you see in the Indian coast or not only India and different part of the globe, this seawater intrusion is a very creates a lot of problem to the people those are living in the coastal region for their drinking water and due to the groundwater contamination. So the next talk will be covering on the seawater intrusion in the coastal environment, and the talk is also how we can, using the new tectonic activity, we can at least we can find out at what place this seawater intrusion is more. So in the next talk, we'll discuss more about this, how this seawater intrusion is taking place at the coastal environment. So till then, bye. We'll meet again at 3:30 p.m.